Ahoy there, I'm Captain Chris. I'm not a real captain, but I am going to try and help you choose the perfect cabin for a cruise on the MSC ship Virtuosa. And this advice will be mostly relevant for Virtuosa's sister ships Meraviglia, Bellissima, Grandiosa and Euribia as well. The most important thing when choosing a cabin, of course, is the price. We'd all like a suite with space like this, but our budget may mean we need to pick something from a little lower down the price range. If you pay the Fantastica fare or above, you can choose exactly which cabin you get rather than having one allocated to you. The inside cabins are the cheapest, and although they can be pretty small and they have no windows, they're popular with plenty of people who are holidaying on a budget and simply see their cabin as somewhere to lay their head at night. There's loads to do on a cruise ship, so you don't really need to spend much time in your room at all, and the cost of these cabins is low enough to make them worth considering. If you need a bit of natural light, then an ocean view cabin has a window, and they're a little bit bigger. These are often mostly on the lower decks. Further up and you'll find mostly balcony cabins. Some of these can have their view obstructed by things like the lifeboats, and these ones come a little cheaper. The balcony cabins are lovely rooms with a sofa bed for if you're travelling with kids, plenty of storage space including under the beds, a dressing table, a mini bar, a TV and a decent sized bathroom. There are also accessible cabins and single cabins, but these are few in number, so usually need to be booked well in advance. And if you're lucky enough to be booking a suite, it's worth knowing that the ones at the front of the ship can be particularly susceptible to the wind. Once you've decided which cabin grade is right for you and your budget, you can now decide exactly which cabin to choose. This is when you should think about what's important to you. If the seas are rough, the cabins at the front and back of the ship and the ones on the higher decks tend to be more susceptible to the motion of the ocean. So if you prefer everything to stay still, you'd be best to avoid these areas. Someone told me recently that the sea was rough on their cruise and they found it better to sleep sideways across the bed, so you could try that if you're struggling. If your cruise is during better weather or in the Mediterranean where the sea is usually calm, you might be more interested in the proximity of your cabin to the facilities that you intend to use the most. This might not seem important, but these ships are absolutely massive, so it can take quite a long time to walk through the whole thing. And if you're wet from swimming in one of the pools, you might not want to shiver and drip for ages as you trudge a long way back to your room. If you're travelling with children, it's worth knowing that most of the entertainment for kids is on the high decks, 15 and above, and the buffet is up there too. The swimming pools are on deck 15, one outdoors and one undercover, and there's always lots to do there with the entertainment staff organising crazy games. On deck 16 there's the Sportplex area, which kids will absolutely love. There's a huge sports court here, as well as loads of arcade games which look really tempting. There's a 10-pin bowling alley here too, which is great fun, as well as a 4D cinema experience with hydraulic seats that dip and dive with the film you're watching. There's a Formula 1 simulator here that you can play on your own or in pairs, and virtual reality games and loads more. It's very big and very impressive. On deck 18 is Do Re Mi Land, which is the kids club area, and also the teen club with video games and so on for 15 to 17-year-olds. Right at the top of the ship on deck 19 is the Savannah Aqua Park, where there are loads of ways to get wet, a water slide that actually slides you out over the side of the ship, and the terrifying Himalayan rope bridge where you get shown how to clip yourself on and walk from one end to the other, 60 metres above sea level. The buffet is huge and wonderful and is a popular choice with families who'd rather not bother with the formal restaurants with waiter service. There's all kinds of delicious food here, as well as burgers, hot dogs, pizza and fries that kids will love. There's plenty of other food too, so you can eat healthily with salad and fruit, or pile your plate high with all you can eat. The buffet is very popular and we loved it. So as you can see, a cabin on a high deck might be the perfect choice for families. But what if all that stuff isn't your scene and you're more interested in gentler pursuits than flinging yourself down a water slide? Well, let me tell you about what's happening on the lower decks. Before I do, could I please ask, if you're finding this video at all useful or interesting, would you please hit the subscribe button and allow notifications? Subscribing doesn't cost you anything, it simply means you'll be notified when I post another video. And the more people subscribe, the more I know that you're enjoying my content, which is important to me, so please subscribe. Thank you. The main dining rooms are on the lower decks 5 and 6, and as you might expect on a ship called Virtuosa, there's a musical theme on board. The restaurants are called Minuetto, Opera and Symphony on deck 6, and below them on deck 5, and as big as those three put together is the Blue Danube. In addition to these restaurants, which are included in your fare, are some other specialty restaurants which come at an extra charge. These are on deck 6 and 7, and there are a few to choose from, including the Butcher's Cut Steakhouse, Kato, which is a sushi and teppanyaki bar where the food is prepared right in front of you. There's Ola Tacos and Cantina, which seemed very popular. And inside L'Atelier Bar was the Indochine, which serves a French Vietnamese style menu. If these are more like the kinds of places you like to dine in, then a cabin on a lower deck will cut down on your travelling time. Also on the lower decks are many of the bars and lounges where there are all kinds of gentler activities going on, like quizzes and games to occupy your days spent at sea. Also on deck 6 is the Grand Theatre, where the shows are on 3 times a night with all kinds of singing and dancing and comedy shows to entertain you each evening. And on deck 7 is another theatre called the Carousel Lounge, where there was a quiz each day and a show each evening, and that was next to the casino. So you can see that cabins on the lower decks are closer to the more sedate activities and formal restaurants with waiter service, and the higher decks are nearer to the pools and sportplex and the kids clubs and the buffet. One small word of warning though. Virtuosa is a lively ship and there are themed parties pretty much every evening that go on late into the night. These are held in the Galleria Virtuosa on deck 6, and if you're a party animal, you'll love them. However, if partying's not your thing and you prefer an early night, you might want to think about choosing a cabin a little bit away from the loud music. The parties are on deck 6 and we could just about hear the music in our cabin on deck 9. It wasn't too loud or intrusive, but it's something to bear in mind, especially if you need silence to get to sleep. Alternatively, pack some earplugs. In fact, there may be extraneous noise if you've got a cabin above any of the late night venues like the theatre, the Masters of the Sea pub and so on. So a quick Google of the ship's deck plan may serve you well before deciding the best spot to pick. And of course, if you pay the Bella fare where a cabin is allocated to you, you may well end up in one of the noisy places or with an obstructed view. So which cabin should you choose? Well, as I've explained, there's no single answer to that question that will suit every traveller, but I would suggest you choose a cabin that's close to the amenities you'll use the most, and one that's surrounded by other cabins above, below and on either side, and away from the lifts and stairs to insulate you from outside noise. And once you've chosen your cabin, you can decline the option to have your selection upgraded, because if you are upgraded, you might find yourself in one of the noisy locations that you'd been so careful to avoid. Our cabin was midships on deck 9, although maybe deck 10 would have been just a little further away from the party music, and we didn't really feel any rocking of the ship, and we looked out over the top of the lifeboats with an unobstructed view, which was lovely. And it wasn't far to walk to the theatre, lounges and main restaurants, which suited us just fine. Whichever cabin you choose, I hope you have as great a holiday as we did, and until next time, thanks for watching.